Okay, feels all right. But more importantly, we got to figure out what for you and for him, like whatever you guys need. And support you. Mhm. But it's like, you know, well, see, the thing I'm worried about now is that I read that there's like a stomach bug going around Long Island. So I'm like, oh, great timing for a Hanukkah party on Sunday. Really, that's in Westchester, ain't it? It sounds not pleasant. Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it's like there's nothing you can do, right? It's like even if you wore a mask, the grandkids are gonna come and jump all over you. Hey, Marie, how you doing? Shabbat shalom. No, you can't. I mean, I think that's exactly right. I like to think that it's building, whatever immunities or whatever it is. I mean, it is. No, I know. Isn't it like the craziest thing to think back in any positive way about COVID? And the only thing I can think to myself is it was the healthiest year of my entire life. When we were on lockdown, that one year, I was like, I didn't get a cold, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. Oh, yeah, that also. I wish I was time. Right? Like even the one where there is a certain crazy town. Oh yeah, now right? They're all in their own. It's legal. It's not the only one. this Shabbat, or you're doing it sort of in there?
My mother is tonight. My father is in 2 weeks. And my sister was my uncle and aunt.
No, no, yeah. There is something also this time of year. I see that tends to be the case. Yeah, there is. Like, yeah. I can't. Who can explain? Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unusual friendship. It's just sort of had I met this lady and other people too, and it's
Amazing. Prophetic steps. All the more of them, I'm really so sorry for that. That's quite a trek, especially this time of year. I assume that it is quite challenging, Beautiful though, I've heard. I mean, it is a place that it's on my list of places in my fantasy. That's a part of the world that I've always wanted to travel more, and I never really got the opportunity. My brother was very, very close to accepting the position as the chief rabbi of Stockholm, which in effect makes you the chief rabbi of Sweden, which is basically because it's the one shul, in Stockholm, and if you're the rabbi of that shul, you are de facto the chief rabbi. And he loved it. In particular, he loves herring, and he said every direction he turned, there was some other form of herring that you could eat. Not for me. Not for me. That's it is. Oh, you're a herring person. No, honestly, I feel this certain shame that I feel in that it's not my thing, right? It's like I feel like I should obligatory, right? Love all Jewish foods of various kinds. All right. Well, I'll let you know when we get to the candles. It'll be pretty much right when we start the service. And maybe Alan, when you come up, maybe you can say who you're remembering tonight and all of that. That might be a nice thing so everybody is a little more connected. All right. Okay. Sort of figure out how to filter it really hard. It's very funny. Very, very funny stuff. I couldn't agree with you more. Tell her that next time you see her. Tell her that. It'll make her feel good. All right. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shalom. Okay, everybody nice and warm? I guess so. It's really. All right, well, in a moment we'll get started with our service. Just want to wish everyone again a Shabbat Shalom. And my gratitude to Ellen Ruby, who is sponsoring our Oneg tonight. And she's sponsoring this as one of those bittersweet experiences, right? It's in remembrance of loved ones, but shared amongst the community of people who love you, Ellen. And so we're really honored to invite you up tonight to light and bless our 2 sets of Shabbat candles. And reminder again, we're lighting 2 sets of candles, one for us in Sag Harbor and one for the hostages each week, hoping that we will not have to continue to do so, and perhaps, for the first time in a while, some potentially positive things I've heard, but, news is news. I will be happy to do that.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tivonu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Good Shabbos to you, Ellen. Thank you for doing that. So we'll turn now in our prayer books and our Sidurim to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat together at the very top of the page. And as always, whenever we don't have Will, our student Keter, here, love to hear your voices sing along with me. And they can even hear you on the streaming, believe it or not. So want to hear those voices. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena l'Adonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena l'Adonai. Naria, Naria, letzor ishenu, nekad mafana vetoda. Naria, Naria, letzor ishenu, bizmihirot naria lo. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena l'Adonai. Lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena, lechu ner hanena l'Adonai. We'll turn now to page 131, Shiru l'Adonai. Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai, baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai, Shiru shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. We'll turn now to 132, page 132, at the very bottom of the page, Or Zarua. Or Zarua la tzadik, Ulehishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik, Ulehishrei lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, V'hodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, V'hodu lezecher kodsho.
We turn now to page 134, Zamru Ladonai, at the very top of the page. Zamru Ladonai Bechinor, Bechinor Bekol Zimra, Bachatzotzrot Bekol Shofar, Hariu Lifnei HaMelech Adonai, Yiram Hayamum Lo, Tebel Veyoshveva, Neharot Imcha Uchaf Yachad, Harim Yiranenu, Lifnei Adonai Kiva, Lishbot Haaretz, Yishbot Tevel Betzedek, Ve'amim B'mesharim, Yiram Hayamum Lo, Tevel Ve'yoshveva, Neharot Imcha Uchaf Yachad, Harim Yiranenu. We turn now to page 135, the middle paragraph in Hebrew, Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Turn now to page 136, the 29th Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod ba'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai Hamayim El Kavod Hirim Adonai Al Mayim Rabim Adonai Al Mayim Rabim Kol Adonai Ba'koach Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidehem kemo egel Levanon besiryon, Kemo ben reimim, Kemo ben re'emim. Kol Adonai chotzeb labotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel ayalot, Vayechesof ye'arot, Uvechalo kulo merkavod, kulo merkavod, kulo merkavod. Adonai lamhabul yashav, Vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai hoz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Turn now to L'chadodi on page 138. Reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. For the final paragraph, we'll rise and face the doors we walked through just a few moments ago. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamur bezachur bedibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, U'shemo echad, L'shem multiferet velitila. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor haberacha, Meherosh mikedem nesucha, Sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, Ki ba'orech kumi ori, Uri shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alaich nigla. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha u'betzola, Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'chadodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. We'll turn now to page 140, Tzadik Katamar, which is just in the middle of the page in Hebrew where it indents. Tzadik Katamar yifrach, Ke'erez b'Lebanon yizkeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yeduvun beseva deshenim verhananim yihu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tsuri velo avlata bo. Invite us now to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish and remain standing for the Baruch Hu on the next page. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon ub'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala ubizman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam li'al me'al maya hitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damihiran behalma v'yimeru. Amen. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. Let's read together now in English on the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Umahavir yom umevi laila, umavdihil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzevahot shemo, el chai v'kayam tamidim loch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, hamahari v'arhavim. We'll turn now to page 150. We'll read together in English toward the bottom of the page. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Ki ehem chayenu ve'orech yameinu v'hem negei yomam v'lahayla v'avatcha al tasir mimenu li'olamim Baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levadecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'shochbecha u'vkumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai Vitem kedoshim le'Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, li'hot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Let's read together now on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. As we turn to page 158, Micha Mocha at the very top. Ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye bye bim 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 bam, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye ba 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam, ya bye ba 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 bye, ya bye 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 bim bam, mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'hakodesh. Nor Tehilot o Sefele, Nor Tehilot o Sefele, Yabai by bim 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 bam, Yabai by bim bam, Yabai by bim 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 bam, Yabai by bim bam, Yabai ba 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 ba, Yabai by bim bam. Yai bye ba 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 bye, ya ba bye bye bim bam. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeam lifnei Moshe Miriam, zeili anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, v'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugolo miad chazak mimenu, Baruch at Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Hashkivenu is on the top of page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoehinu, lechaim ushalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu, shomreinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. We turn now to the top of page 162, Vishamru. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam, Einai beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat, Shabbat vayinafash. Invite us now to rise in body or spirit. We'll begin the Amidah together on page 164, and from that point on, continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. When you're finished at the end, if you're still standing, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi yadi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oseh shalom bimromav. Uya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol Yehoshvei Tevel. Ya'aseh shalom. Ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371 as we offer our Misha Berach, our healing prayer for this evening. Tonight we're thinking in our community of Allegra Himmel, Lori Hertzen, Madeline Engelfeld, Rachel Bat Marsha, Sue Wartor, Abigail Blum, Kate Sherwood, Bensi Tepper, Ame and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devora Bat Francis, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, David Kyle Klopman, Lorraine Davis, Kim Birnbaum, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Rachel Bat Ora, Peretz Ben Shlomo, and Israel Ben Yitzchak. In addition to those names that I just read, if anyone is thinking of anyone tonight they'd like to add, we'll start on this side of the room and work towards the back, and then this side of the room, and just ask everyone who wants to share a name to please raise a hand so I don't miss anyone. We invite those watching at home to add names of your loved ones as well. We'll join together in the Misha Berach in the middle of page 371. Misha Berach Avoteinu Mekor HaBracha Leimhoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We now offer our prayer for Israel in time of war. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu. Our God and God of our ancestors, you know that the Jewish people are one nation with one heart, and now that heart is broken. O healer of broken hearts, binder of their wounds, be with our brothers and sisters who've been taken captive and with the families of the victims. Watch over the hostages, break their bonds, and bring them out from darkness to light. Proclaim release to the captives, liberation to the imprisoned. Comfort the families, bring them under the shelter of your wings. Bring complete healing of body and spirit to all of the wounded. Bind up our wounds and grant us healing. Sur Yisrael v'goalo, rock and redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel, the initial manifestation of our redemption. Shield it with your care, spread over it your shelter of peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Grace them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend us. Crown their efforts with victory. Bless the land with peace, its inhabitants with lasting joy. Shomer Yisrael, guardian of Israel. Strengthen and bless the defenders of Israel who stand guard on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May we see the promise of the psalmist realized. You turned my mourning into dancing, my sackcloth into robes of joy. God, protect, preserve, and restore peace and well-being to Israel, your people, and together we say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I know I said last week, last week's Torah portion, that you could just point your finger to any verse and there was something to talk about. This week's Torah portion is very similar in that way. In Parshat Vayishlach, we continue the story of Jacob that began last week. Those that, of course, were diligently studying Torah last week with us will remember Jacob and his brother Esav don't exactly begin their lives together in the most friendly fashion. In fact, we're told that even in the womb they are wrestling with each other. There is a series of events that result in Jacob taking both the birthright, the right to the lands and to the properties of his father Isaac from his brother Esav, who is the elder. Even in twins, since he came out first, he is the elder. And later in the Parsha, also taking the blessing that his father gives at the very end of his sort of this narrative. And then it continues on, and the continuation is that Jacob runs for his life. And his brother Esav basically is left. And the way we are left with the story is Esav is a very particular kind of character. So I want to start by asking you, what do you know about Esav? When we think about the character of Esau, and this isn't a test, but it is a test. I want to see. Burly, okay, thank you, Roger. Hunter, okay, hairy guy, right, red hair. What else do we know about him? Okay, sort of a, yeah, he's something of an impulsive guy, right? He gives over the birthright because he's hungry. He doesn't have that sort of foresight to think maybe this isn't something I should just trade away for, a bowl of stew. Okay, certainly those. What do we know about him, though, in terms of his historical impact? Do we know who Esav becomes, who he represents? Roger? Well, it's really earlier. Ishmael is that, but he becomes a part of that lineage as well. But he's tied to a different people at the beginning. He becomes, as we're told, the father of the Edomites. Okay, so those that may not know about the Edomites so much, not exactly the friendliest neighbors to the early Israelite community. To sort of what ends up happening as the time goes on is that it's even more than that. They become associated with the Roman Empire. So later on, when the rabbis refer to the Romans, they really oftentimes refer to them synonymously with Edom. So the character of Esav, aside from his existence in the Torah itself, becomes emblematic of really a antagonist of the Jewish people throughout history. And in fact, the line of Amalek is also tied to him, which means also Haman, which means basically, from a rabbinic standpoint, almost every bad guy that's ever existed in history is tied to the character of Esav. But it's important to understand that those characterizations of him are a retconning of sorts by the rabbis generations later. When reading the text itself, you'd certainly get a picture of something of a brutish man, right? Somebody who is known to be impulsive, who is known better for his violence in the world than his brother Jacob, who's described as somebody who likes to sit in the tent, who's beloved by his mother, right? The kind little Jewish boy that everybody loves, right? Esav is sort of the polar opposite in the mind of our ancestors, but he also was one of the most misunderstood characters in the Torah. Because we associate his earliest descriptions as being, again, this sort of brutish kind of character, we miss a few of these other key moments in his life which presents something a little bit more complicated. And we're told at the end of last week's portion, right, his response to losing the blessing of his father, which in that case was not a result of his impulsiveness, it was the result of deception. He is described as weeping bitterly. Right? He is. You have to picture in your mind, right, somebody who's just found out that everything that they were expecting has been stolen from them, let alone by their own brother, as directed by their mother. Okay, and you see his emotion come out in that, and then the parsha kind of ends. Right, Jacob goes his way. He ends up getting married. Long story short, to two women, has lots of children, finds his way in the world, comes back, is told by God, come back to the land. Right, come back to this place. It's your birthright. And of course, coming back to his birthright means what? Right? Seeing his brother for the first time, right? Confronting Esav. And the whole beginning of this parsha, Vayishlach, is him literally sending out, in the hopes of not being killed, 3 different groups of gifts to his brother, bowing down to him 7 times, right? Trying to create, again, living in the image of that sort of, warrior, because he's told that Esav is not just anybody now. He's a chieftain with 400 armed soldiers going with him, which, as I've explained in years past, 400 armed soldiers in that time, in that part of the world, is like the equivalent of the U.S. Army, right? You have to imagine what that means to a guy like Jacob. His brother's last words were, "I'm going to kill you," basically. So he comes back to this moment, and the expectation is what? That's going to happen, right? We have no reason to believe that Esau is going to do anything other than kill his brother, take all of his possessions, and that be the end of our line. But of course, that's not how the story goes. We wouldn't be sitting here talking to each other. But what's really important to know is in that first moment in which there is an interaction between the two of them, after all the cavalcade of gifts that he gives, all that other stuff, when Esau sees his brother, you know what he does first? The first thing that he does? Torah tells us he runs towards his brother, he embraces his brother, and he kisses him upon the neck. Okay, so we have this image of him. Now we're confused. Who is this person? And the rabbis are confused by this too, and they can't accept the idea that Esau actually has that characteristic. And so they tell you in the Torah itself, in the text itself, come to shul tomorrow and I'll show you, above the word that says that he kissed him are several dots, very unusual for Torah script. And the rabbis tell us that that is an indication that he wasn't actually kissing him. He basically is the first vampire in history, and he is actually digging into his neck. Literally. That's what the rabbis tell us. He is biting into his neck. Okay? They can't conceive of the possibility that Esau is actually doing what the Torah says is happening, right? Which is hugging and embracing his brother in forgiveness, right, after years of being apart and in strife. Can't even conceive of it. Now, I've known this story for a long time. I actually gave a drash about that long before I was a rabbi at my grandparents' shul in Ohio. I dug it up, so I know that it exists. But there's actually another text that sort of supports the idea that Esau is actually more important to the story than we realize. Forgetting, again, all the things that the rabbis add on. And I have to give credit to Rabbi David Wyman, one of our former members, who wrote something beautiful about it this week. I'm not going to share his words, but he pointed me towards a chapter of the Torah that he himself, after decades as a rabbi, had said that he realized he'd never actually read, is chapter 36 of Genesis. And what happens in chapter 36, the end of this week's parsha? We get in 43 verses a description of the line of Esau. 43 verses of the Torah solely to describe who is derived from Esau. Okay, not one verse, not 10 verses, 43 verses tracing the lineage of this person whom we're told is the worst possible person, is an enemy to our people throughout history, is a terrible brother and a brute. The Torah devotes 43 verses to describing what happens to him and to his progeny. And at the end, it doesn't say they became Amalek or the Edomites killed, right? It just gives us the list of all of these people coming down. So I want to bounce to another text for a second. And this we go to Maimonides, to his Guide for the Perplexed. And he notices this as well. And he draws a big conclusion from one of the verses itself, which is extrapolated out as to really be talking about this entire section of the Torah. So what does he say? He says that there are in the Torah, there are in the law, portions which include deep wisdom, but have been misunderstood by many persons, and they require, therefore, an explanation. I mean, he says, the narratives contained in the Torah which many consider as being of no use whatsoever. So one of the classic reads of genealogy in the Torah is, why do we need this? Right? Could have just said Esau married these people, had lots of children, or not said it at all. Okay? A character who is already out of the birthright, out of the plan, out of the brit, out of the covenant, just write him off. Okay? But Maimonides says, no. Okay? There's something to this. Right? And he says, had Moses nothing else to write, and this is Maimonides, again, pointing out that Moses is important to writing the Torah, and he quotes a line, and this is the sister of Lotan, whose name was Timnah. And by the way, as a side comment, if you've ever been to Israel, if you've ever been to the Negev, Lou and I were there together years ago. Timnah is a really interesting nature reserve in the desert of the deserts, and there is a man-made lake of some sort that is in the middle of that space. And so this name, Timnah, comes from this, and this is of the line of Esau. And he says as follows, he says, every narrative in the Torah serves a certain purpose in connection with religious teaching. It either helps to establish a principle of faith, or to regulate our actions, or to prevent wrong and injustice among men. So to me, when I read this, and I read Rabbi Wyman's words, and when I read chapter 36 today, from beginning to end, every one of those 43 verses, when I contemplated the ultimate question of why is this there? Why is it there in so many verses? Why do we care about who Esav becomes, why would we even give a moment's notice to a character who is otherwise described in the Torah as, a terrible person, or a person that you don't want to spend time with, who's no longer part of our history, no longer part of our covenant? There has to be something else to it. And I think what I have come to realize is, right, as Maimonides says, it's not just a question of increasing our faith or regulating action. In this case, it's a question of preventing wrong and injustice amongst men, in my estimation. And what is that wrong and that injustice? To some degree, it is the injustice of what the rabbis did to this character. Right? It's the injustice of saying to us that the Torah, which, other than describing him in early part of his life as not necessarily the nicest guy, as something of a brutish guy, to add on to him and to create the legacy that every terrible thing that has ever happened to us, every terrible person who has wanted our extermination derives from him, is not in the Torah itself. And that in the end, if you read this story carefully, it's the exact opposite story. It is the story of two brothers who had every reason to kill each other, who are then described as finding a way to reconcile in sorts. It doesn't mean they're the best friends. They part ways not to see each other again until Isaac dies. Okay, it's not to say that they suddenly see eye to eye or that all is forgiven or anything of the sort. But I think there is an inherent suggestion in the Torah that Esav is a more complicated character than we want him to be. He's a character in which we have to see a certain amount of ourselves. We have to try to understand what it is to be that person. Okay, to have everything taken from you, to know that your mother has chosen your brother over you, right? To have all of those experiences, to have every reason to take vengeance, every opportunity to do so, and yet at the end of the day, it's not what happens. Now, I don't have the standing to go against thousands of years of rabbinic tradition. I certainly can't tell you that whatever they're presenting is wrong. It's not that. But one has to question, with all of this evidence, what the reason would be for continuing the story of Esav in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's to remind us that while he is no longer a part of our lineage, and he may result in all manner of people down the road who may in fact have done terrible things to us, at the origin point of his identity, he is a brother, he is a son, and he ultimately is a part of our lineage as well, in one form or the other. He is still the son of Isaac and Rebekah. And if we try to write him off, and if we try to create a circumstance in which Esav means nothing to us, if you took out chapter 36 altogether and tried to erase him from history, I think that would be a great disservice, not just to his memory, but to our legacy as well. I think in the end, it's not to tell us that all of our enemies are our friends, or that everybody who's trying to kill us should be forgiven, or that peace is something that should just magically fall from the sky, or that all we have to do is come together and then everything will be right. I don't think it's that. But I think it is a text in our tradition that tells us to be very cautious about the conclusions we draw about people, about their perspectives, their desires, their hopes, their outcomes, and ultimately speaking, to give at least a tiny, tiny, tiny opening in the crack that suggests the possibility that if we can see the bigger picture, if we can remember the fact that in the end, whether we like it or not, we are connected. And when we are looking to create peace in the world, to realize that oftentimes it is going to come in moments like this story. It is going to come in moments in which every indication says there is nothing but disaster ahead, nothing but death and destruction, nothing but violence. And yet the possibility always remains, even amongst bitter enemies, for an understanding, a détente, a way in which peoples can continue to exist without having to obliterate or destroy each other entirely. That's a tough lesson for a moment like this. It's not one that most people, I think, want to hear right now, whoever the enemy may be in your mind. But you can't erase Torah. And you can't, no matter how much the rabbis do it, you can't make these examples disappear. If nothing else, they act as a counterbalance to our most extreme positions. And to realize that Judaism asks a lot of times of us more than we are willing to give in many ways, especially in moments where we don't have any interest in forgiving. We don't have any interest in finding good in those that are our perceived enemies or our real enemies. And I hope very much that while this sermon is not likely to convince anybody to radically change one's ways, is simply to say that in big moments and small moments, and national moments and personal moments, there are opportunities to, as I said, look for forgiveness, look for a certain amount of brotherly love, and also to look for the guidance between the lines that sometimes, as Maimonides says, is not so immediately obvious and requires us to think a little bit deeper, to reach a little bit deeper, and to hope a little bit deeper. With that, I wish you all Shabbat Shalom. I invite us now to turn to page 586 at the very bottom of the page. We'll rise in body or spirit. Again, page 586, Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol Latet Gedula Liotzer Breshit Shelo Asanu Kegoyeh HaRatzot Velo Samanu Kemishpachot Adama Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonham Banahachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu Benemar V'haya Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad Ushemo Echad. Ask those in mourning, those observing yahrzeit, to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated. We think first of those who passed in our community in recent months. Heather Abrams, David Amanoff, Luis Crandall, Mal Daphner, Judith Barry Emanuel, Richard Gambino, Barbara Goldfarb, Lita Goldsmith, Jesse Hirsch, Barbara Kushner, Ann Lieber, Robert Lykoff, Jeffrey Miller, James Pappas, Danielle Rigg, Janice Samble, William Speck, Harlan Spitz, Charles Sparopoulos, Ronald Tempowski, Alan Weinstein, Ronald Weller, and Susan Wolfson. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Dr. Joseph Barkley, Gertrude Blank, Annie Bookstaver, Emil Brill, Lillian Farber, Erwin Godinsky, Tessie Heller, Frida Siblowitz Hertz, Charles Hipsch, Leo Klopman, Anton Jacob Kurz, Leo Leibowitz, Rosalind Melankoff, Harlan Noddle, Elizabeth Pence, Hilda Ruby, Lisa Schneidman, Harry Shockett, Louis Schwab, Josephine Schwartz, Nina Schumann, Doris Siro, Melvin Siro, Ralph Spinner, Arthur Spitz, Daniel Tatcon, Abraham Abba Weinstein, and Rose Zuckerman. In addition to those names that I just read, is anyone saying Kaddish for anyone I didn't mention? I'll invite the mourners to join me on page 598, and if it's your custom, I invite those to rise who choose to rise. Again, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, bagalav izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha berichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Now, I never want to do this, it's a strange way to say it, but I never want to play favorites when it comes to yahrzeits, because every yahrzeit matters a great deal. But I do want to say just two words. On the list of yahrzeits tonight is Anton Jacob Kurz, father of Susan Kurz Snyder. So aside from being a remarkable person, I had the privilege of meeting him shortly before he passed away, and a Holocaust survivor. It was also the first funeral that I officiated. And, you know, Susan mentioned, 10 years, sort of hard to believe. And it was still unique in my experience, and that he was also a high-ranking Mason. And so the funeral was at the Masonic Lodge in New York City, and I still remember those early days feeling very lacking in confidence, to say the very least, as to what I was doing. And being in that space and seeing so many people who loved him, and just knowing, Susie, it's tough, right? Well, it's tough. No matter how many years go by, right? We miss our loved ones, for sure. So, sorry for getting verklempt, but, thing about being a rabbi, right, is even sad memories, right, they're very powerful. And, Susie, Ellen, everyone remembering tonight and all nights. Just know how much we care for all of you, and we're with you in your loss, as we are in moments of celebration, for sure. All right, so I pulled myself together. Speaking of happier times, a few announcements. First, of course, is to join us for our Oneg Shabbat tonight, again, generously sponsored by Ellen Ruby in remembrance of a number of her family members tonight. So, Ellen, thank you so much for sponsoring tonight and for remembering alongside all of us and for helping to feed us afterwards and to bring us a chance of community, which is so important. Also, a reminder that Shabbat services begin tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and we'll welcome everybody to join us here or, of course, online, as well as our Torah study, which begins at noon. Reminder, as we begin the holiday season a little earlier this year, having our Hanukkah party this Sunday, the 15th, so that we can really have the maximum amount of our community still here before everyone starts to go away. So a reminder that the party will begin at 3 o'clock here at the temple, 3 to 5 o'clock on Sunday. Also a reminder that we will light the first night of Hanukkah on the wharf, as we always do this year, the evening of December 25th at 6 o'clock. So we'll join together, just from experience, dress warm, and of course we'll have hot chocolate and we'll have sufganiyot for everyone to celebrate together. Just a reminder also, along with our celebration and our joy, is also opportunities to give back and to do good works, one of which is, of course, to remember the toy drive. Remember to bring those toys on Sunday. They're supposed to be unwrapped, correct? Unwrapped toys. Again, bring them Sunday to the party. Also, coats for Simi, and we just got a recent request, I'm told, from Ola as well. Ola and I think Maureen's Haven is the one that was added as well. So looking for coats, clothing, gloves, hats, anything that, especially as you can tell, right, this time of year, everything is appreciated. You can drop those off during the party or during business hours until December 30th. Also a reminder that Rabbi Alan Levin's virtual bereavement group that is happening virtually, I should say, Tuesday, December 17th from 6 to 7:30, as well as a virtual anti-Semitism committee meeting on Tuesday, December 17th at 7 p.m. And is there an SJC meeting this week? No. Every 2 weeks. So not this week, but the following week as well. So I think those are all of my announcements, as far as I know. Did I miss anything? Oh, board meeting Wednesday. Also important. Definitely. Okay, so with that, we're going to conclude our service with a little bit of hopeful singing. Page 645. To remember again that while there are times in which, sadly, we are called to fight, that our goal, according to the prophet Isaiah, is to reach a point in which the world, right, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, shall never again study war. Lo yisa goy el goy chereb, lo yamadu od milchama. Lo yisa goy el goy chereb, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goy el goy chereb, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goy el goy chereb, lo yilmedu od milchama. Ask us to rise for Kiddush, page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav b'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu. אחרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. חיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Again, thank you, Ellen Ruby, so much. Please come next door, have some delicious food. Give everybody a hug. I have my moments.
I know.